Welcome to the If You Know You Grow podcast. My name is Chantel Braley, and I am going to be your host for the next however many minutes. This podcast has been created to help bring you behind the scenes of some incredible brands, hear some incredible stories, and make it so that it is no longer an if you know industry, because now it is all about if you know, you grow. Hello, everybody. Long time no listen, possibly, because I have taken about a little like 2-week hiatus basically because I didn't release an episode last week, and I had plans to get it done, but I think I severely underestimated the amount of time that I was going to have within that week, which rarely happens because I think I've really started to nail my schedule, but it's going to happen to all of us from time to time. So I thought instead of putting something out that wasn't as well thought out, I would just hold and wait. And we'll see. Today we're filming in a slightly different format because we are actually filmed directly into Riverside, which is a tool. And I usually have like my camera and I do this whole different setup, but I can't find my SD card. So I will sort that out later. That could be tomorrow's problem. But I had a really great concept for today's idea, or something that I think is a great concept that was kind of formulated based on questions that I am very regularly asked by people or reoccurring trends that I often see. Before we jump into this, as a little life update, I did tease something on socials a couple weeks ago. And it was that, I had ticked something off my bingo list that I didn't expect to happen. And by the time this episode is going to be released, I will actually have the keys to my first commercial space, which is crazy to think that I have my own space. But I wanted to find a home not only for this beautiful podcast for me to be able to film in Brisbane. I thought that with some of the things that I want to accomplish this year, and we're just going to chat about them now, it would be good for me to actually have my own space. So, one thing that I really want to get into more of is having a space where smaller brands can find a home to connect, because I have so many smaller brands within my network that just want to do a quick little pop up and they don't have the ability to. And now I'll have a space that they can, utilize so that they can focus on their community. I want somewhere that I can have as a co-working space, because outside of WeWork, Brisbane doesn't really have a whole lot. And it just felt like there was a gap. I really want to do a wrap party for the podcast, which I will chat about in the next couple of weeks. Realistically, I probably need to get tickets on sale for that soon. And I also want to have some in real life education moments. And I mean, Brisbane is my home, it's my hub. And even though I do want to do stuff across Australia, I thought, let's nail this here. And I had an opportunity pop up that I just couldn't pass up. So I will have a home for a beautiful space soon, and I am picking up the keys and I cannot wait. And I also need to fit it out and do all of those things, which is completely outside of my zone of being comfortable. But do you know what? We're going to give it a shot, and we're also going to document it. So I guess other life updates. I last week did 7 flights in a 8-day period, which is crazy. And I think that's actually the craziest I've had all year. And I went basically from Brisbane to Sydney to watch the NRL Grand Final, which was insane and the best live sporting event that I think I've ever seen in my life. I then came back to Brisbane, went to Melbourne to take care of a couple of things, which didn't really go to plan because just like some of the plans that I had made couldn't come to fruition, but I was able to do a couple of really cool things. And my best guy friend, Guy, happened to be down there as well on a business trip. So we got to have dinner and it was awesome. And I got to meet some of his coworkers, which it's always cool when you get to see one of your friends in a professional capacity. He's now made it to being a partner at his law firm. And, thinking about, our friendship over the last 16 years, it's so cool to see him thrive in this professional element. And I'm just so insanely proud of him. Then obviously went back to Brisbane, then came back to Sydney, had some cool things to do in Sydney, went to hang out at the Experian office and had a training with Athos Commerce. And then from Sydney, flew to Tasmania and was so honored to be a guest at the Humble Brags and Shopping Bags Founders Retreat. So I was one of 40 founders. There's about 55 people in total. Even though I'm not a founder, I'm obviously an executive in an e-commerce business, and I work with a lot of founders. So I really resonate with struggles that founders have. I work front lines in the business, and I also have an ownership mentality. So it was nice to be, a couple of executives. There were a couple of people who weren't actually founders in that space, but it was a really great time to be collaborative, to chat about what's happening. And, they did not shape today's podcast. Today's podcast has been an accumulation of things that have been happening and that, I've heard really ultimately in my career. But I wanted to focus on this because I felt like I met so many amazing people and there are so many reoccurring issues. And there's always going to be a series of issues when you're trying something new, right? And you're going to have teething pains and that completely, it comes apart and parcel. And it was really nice to have this group of amazing, talented, hardworking people who are willing to talk about the highs and lows because I think that we really often see people's highlight reels. And it's not that I want people to show up and be negative, but it's not easy. And to say it's really easy, I feel like is a disservice to the work that you're doing as an individual. And it doesn't really sell the whole story. So today I want to talk about whether or not you are in your own way. So these are mistakes that I frequently see by leaders, by founders, whether you are in a startup business or whether you are an established business. These are things that I'm seeing as reoccurring trends in businesses that are kind of below, I'd say below the $20 million mark. And the reason I say below 20 million is because in each scale of business, you are going to hit different teething pains. So like $0 to 250,000 is one problem, right? 250,000 to 2 million is one problem. And then incrementally, you start to have different problems depending on the scale that your business is at. So these are things that I have helped people work through or conversations that I have. And I just wanted to chat about them because one, you're not alone if you're having these problems, but maybe I can share something insightful that might help you get past them. So the first mistake or issue or problem, and I'm going to say that this is well and truly a mistake because I cannot see the benefit in this, right? You think that you're the best at everything, not because you're proud of what you do or because you actually are the best, but because you have control issues. Your business is your baby. It is your livelihood. It is something that is going to be so critical to you. But in order for you to operate at your highest capacity, you have to let go of certain things. If you are too deep in the weeds, there is the concept of working on your business and working in your business. And in the efforts of scaling, you are going to have to flip flop between the two, and it's going to be a constant. But if you are working too much in your business, you will not be able to work on your business because you will not have the bandwidth and the space and the creativity to be able to actually do that effectively. And that's probably really hard to hear. But there are so many processes that if you had to think about what you bring to your brand, what your secret sauce is, I think, I talk about the term secret sauce a lot. And it's because there are different people that I have worked with at different times who have founded businesses where it wasn't that they were perfect at everything, but they had one thing that really was their secret sauce. And that secret sauce is what made the difference in this business. So if I think about Petal and Pup, Tiff's secret sauce was her eye. She is one of the best buyers that I've ever met in my career. She has incredible fashion sense and she really knows what people want to buy. And then she knew how to display it. It didn't matter from the point that things were on iPhones and it was her parents taking photos of her on an iPhone and it wasn't a professional shoot to the point where there was an e-commerce studio. She knew how things needed to be styled. She knew how things needed to be color graded. Like that business was built on attention to detail and creativity. But she knew what she couldn't do. And so she then outsourced those things to other people. And, she held onto the Instagram for a very long time, and that was her thing. And that's fine because she knew exactly what to post to have a product absolutely sell out during a restock. And it wasn't something that really was scalable or teachable because she has just this such an incredible, you cannot quantify how phenomenal this woman is in terms of what she was able to bring to the party. This is why that brand had unprecedented success well before they ever even had an established team. Once the team was established, we just took it from, one strength to another strength. But you need to know when you need to let go of certain things within your business. And they need to be the things that don't bring you joy. They need to be the things that you actually are not uniquely skilled in. And having control can often hold you back and it can make you so stressed out. And, when we were at the retreat this weekend, I was told by Sean was a massage therapist who specializes in Chinese medicine. So he's really heavy into energy work. And he was basically like, you're carrying too much of the masculine and you're carrying far like it was, and it's in every aspect of my life. And that's something that I agree with so much because I want to be in certain parts of my life, the passenger princess. I just want to be taken care of. I'm happy making the money and like I love doing that. Like I love having that control and that autonomy, but sometimes I just want to be the passenger princess. I don't want to stress about it. I don't want to worry about it. But you're not always able to do that. But I'm not able to do that. So I sit really heavily in my masculine energy a lot of the time. And it's not something that I enjoy. And I know that that holds me back because where does creativity come from? As someone who's hyper creative, creativity actually comes from your feminine. And this is not saying that any men are listening that you are not creative because you are masculine, but creativity and rebirthing concepts like that comes from feminine energy. So you need to have that balance. And being controlling is a masculine. It's a masculine thing. And if you have to have control, then you're stopping your own growth. So the next thing is you don't have a defined process, but you micromanage everything. So this one is kind of aligned with the first one, but like this should be your clear view of if you are micromanaging everything, then again, do you have control issues? Do you have the inability to create process? Or do you just feel like you haven't hired the right team? And that's something that I will do an episode on in hiring because I think that I've really nailed this process after lots of years of doing it wrong. But if you don't have defined processes on things, you're creating the ability for things to fail and you're not setting anyone else on your team up for success. So you need to make sure that you have a really clear, defined process. If you have a social media manager who's been in your business for longer than 6 months and you are still checking their Instagram captions, you have either not trained them properly, you have hired somebody that's underqualified, or you have control issues. And do you know what the great thing is? You can actually fix the first two. So if you've not trained them properly, then you can train them. You can provide a process. You can give them guardrails. If they're underqualified, that's just a skill issue. It's not a will issue. We can fix that. We can train them. Again, we can give them autonomy for them to be successful because Instagram captions, they're actually not that deep. So you need to let it go. But there are other things that will sit into that in that trend. So I want you to think about it. I want you to think about what you are micromanaging because you have not created defined processes and you have not set people up for success. The next one is you want people to have an ownership mentality, but you don't want to invest in them. And this could be because you think they're entitled. I think that there's a really big conversation about Gen Z being super entitled. I think Gen Z just has a lot better boundaries than millennials do. And fuck, I wish I had some of those. I really wish that 12 years ago, I had better boundaries. I even wish that 5 years ago, I had better boundaries. Things that has completely transformed my life in the last 12 months is I created boundaries. I created really healthy boundaries and I became a little bit more selfish. And it's allowed me to be a better version and better quality me. And I'm actually producing better work. But Gen Z actually just has a context issue. So if you are not investing in your team, if you are not giving them context, if you are not empowering them to make holistic decisions, if you are not allowing them to do things like go to industry events where you've paid for them to attend. So like they go to a training day and they are still getting their wage and you're paying for their travel in and all of those things. And I don't mean into a different state. I could just mean like pay for their parking into the freaking city so that they don't have to be out or have to figure out public transport if they're normally not public transport takers. If you are not investing in somebody in your business through time, through upskilling, and through just general duty of care, then why the fuck do you expect them to have an ownership mentality? Because there's a lot of jobs. We actually have a talent drought in this industry, which means if you are not creating an amazing work environment, and by amazing work environment, I actually just kind of mean the bare minimum of being a positive leader, making sure that you're investing in your team, making sure that you have really regular review processes to create transparency and to create a really healthy dialogue for two-way feedback. If you're not acknowledging them, not acknowledging their birthdays, their work anniversaries, like all of these things, like why is somebody going to want to work hard for you when you're not investing in them? It doesn't just mean buying pizza on a Friday Even things like flexible work options are things that can make someone feel invested in. And if I just said flexible work and you're like, oh my God, they couldn't do the work from home, that means you haven't created the right process. I'm not saying full remote work, but in this industry, you have two types of personalities, or just like in general, really, you have two types of personalities. So you will either have an introvert or an extrovert. If you are an introvert, being in an office setting can often be draining. They have sometimes really deep analytical work, and if they are disrupted, they could be creating mistakes. But also, it might be good for them to actually have a little bit of time where they can work remotely. Granted, they need to be doing their work, but if they're not doing their work, you've hired the wrong employee. Because I've had out of, I don't know, I'd say across all businesses, 60 to 70 people who have reported to me that have worked remotely. I've had issues with like three. And those people, the issues were bigger than them working remotely. And so that shouldn't have surprised me. And it didn't surprise me when it happened. And if you have an extrovert, you want them to work from home a little bit because they will go in and disrupt the whole office because they just want to chat about everything and yap and they're creating a vibe. And like, we love a vibe. But if you have a culture that requires your team to be in 5 days a week, then you actually don't have a culture. You might have a control problem. Sure, there are people that want to work in an office 5 days a week, but it's amazing when you put hybrid work options on an opportunity on Seek or on LinkedIn, the caliber of team that you get is significantly different. So I implore you, like, think about it. Can I offer these things? And it doesn't have to be for the whole team. Not every job can be done remotely, but I will say very honestly that COVID has completely changed the game. Everyone listening to this should know this. But in marketing specifically, hybrid should be a non-negotiable. But these are concepts of like ways to invest in your staff, ways to create healthy environments, ways to make people feel valued because they are not going to show up with an ownership mentality if they're not owning anything in the business. Like that's a pretty ridiculous ask. So the next one is you are hiring too high too fast and you're not maximizing opportunity within your business. So I know that there are lots of shiny toys out there in the industry. I can be a shiny toy. Like I am somebody who has worked with businesses that do really well and I know a lot of things and I might not be the right person to work with you. There are a lot of coaches and mentors or freelancers that might not be the right person to work for you, and there's a lot of people that you can bring in-house full time that might not be the right person to work with you. The reason I say that is not because I am against these people. It's purely because we more so like advisors, strategists. I'm not a doer. I'm not going to go in and do your social media strategy. I'm not going to go in and do your ads. I actually am the wrong person to do that. That is not currently where it makes sense for my hourly rate to go there. It doesn't, because again, I should be working on businesses and not in businesses. That's where I currently am at. And that's not because I think I'm too good. It's just because there are better ways to create efficiency. So you may not actually need a general manager. You may not need a head of operations. You may not need those things. There comes a point when you will need those things, and it's important to strategically hire for those. When you can see in your P&L that you can afford those wages and that you know that by adding this person into your business, it's going to, again, free up space, that first thing that we were talking about, freeing up space so that you can focus on your secret sauce, do that. But don't hire before then. You need to be willing to hire sometimes entry level, depending on what you can afford, sometimes mid-tier people who are hungry and who are willing. I will hire anybody that is 80% there if they have the right attitude, because I can fix any level of skill. Any level of skill, we can find someone to mentor you. I can train you. We can develop a training program. We can invest in upskilling. But I can't train your personality to not suck. I can't make you want to be here and want to try. So I love hiring people who are hungry because those are the type of people that you need in a D2C business. You don't need perfection. And you probably don't actually want somebody generally who's come from a big box brand or a big agency. Reason being is because they've been very comfortable being a cog. There is nothing wrong with that, but working in one lane and staying in one lane is so different from being able to command the entire fucking motorway, which is the expectation in the D2C world. So sometimes you'll find someone who's like, I went into that, I didn't really like it. It wasn't for me and I'm really excited and I understand the expectations. And that's because you've clearly outlaid the expectations and you are paying appropriately for those level of expectations. But if not, there are certain markets that I find harder to hire in. And like, I think Melbourne is one of those. And it's because of the fact that there's not a lot of those scrappy D2C brands. So there's a lot of talent, but a lot of the talents become freelance. And there becomes a point where like that's not sustainable because you want someone in your business full time. So you need to, again, like be creative with how you're going to find different people. And often hiring hungry is going to be to your best benefit. And here is the last one where I think that people are often in their own way. And I find it so funny. So it's you're anti-agency, but you're also not good at hiring. So I am neither pro-agency or pro-in-house. I'm quite agnostic. It depends on the business. It really depends on the business. And this is really controversial. So I've decided whether or not I was going to say this, but I am amazed by the amount of people who are like, all agencies are trash. But come here and like, join me and I'll teach you how to do it. Just pay me to do it. What? Is this not kind of the same? Kind of? Bad advice is going to be bad advice, or like advice not tailored for you is bad advice. And you can get so much out of a coaching group. So please don't think that I'm saying like coaching groups are bad. What I mean is that like everything is a tool and everything has a purpose. And where you are at in your journey and the lane that you decide to go down needs to be dependent on what perfectly works for you. You're going to get to a point where blanketed advice does not serve you. And that's because you are going to be hitting that teething point where the general advice doesn't work because you have nailed that. So that means you're going to need tailored advice. Whether this does mean you need to get an advisor and who's going to really unpack your business and like flip it upside down and say like, let's fucking go. Or maybe you need to bring a full-time employee in, or you need to bring an agency in. And the risk across those three decisions are all the same. Because if you do not find the right person to work with, it doesn't matter if they're in-house. It doesn't matter if they are, an agency, and it doesn't matter if they're an advisor. If they're not for you, then they're not for you. But it's so funny when people be like, fuck all this, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, oh, so we're pushing the blame because you were really bad at deciding what you needed. So it's the fault of that entire zone of the industry. Sorry. There's not a single business that I've worked with where every single thing has been set up the same. And guess what? They were all really successful. And where they didn't have success, we then made a flip or made a decision to change that teething point and that problematic area to make sure that they were able to thrive and have a really healthy business. So like you just can't blanket statement things. There are bad agencies. There are shit house employees that you can bring in, and there are going to be advisors and consultants that don't work for you because you need to be good at vetting what you're bringing in. And you also need to have a lot of clarity as to what you want. Like, don't be fooled by the shiny toy. Because just because it worked for somebody else doesn't mean it's going to work for you. Your business is different. Your product is different. And that would be really silly to think like, oh yes, because you've done it, I can definitely do it too. All right. So we are going to actually skip Smash or Pass today. Reason being is because I feel as though I kind of gave you my Smash or Passes with these. So for me, like Smash today is about making sure that you are making choices from an appropriate place, not from a place of control, from a place where you are making a decision that is going to better everybody in your business. And you are not doing it from control. You're not doing it out of fear, and you are not doing it from a scarcity mindset. The next one is where you're choosing people. And this is the next Smash thing is you are choosing people to work with who are the people that you need to work with, whether this is a consultant or an agency or bringing a team member in-house. You're being really thoughtful about why you're bringing this person in and what your expectations are and how you are going to make sure that the partnership works. Because if one channel is truly the reason that you're like falling apart, then I would say you're probably not looking at the business correctly because it's like 1,000% not it. So yeah, so thank you for joining in. I hope that you have a great week. I'm going to be releasing an extra episode this week because I know this one's a little bit shorter and I took a week off. So I've got more coming. I also have some really exciting guests coming next month and an event that's going to be happening in December. So make sure that you are subscribed to this. Make sure you are following on Instagram at If You Know You Grow Pod, and you will just stay up to date with everything. Have a great week.